The IGF process, as advertised, produced no resolutions or agreements of any kind, and this was explicit in its mandate that it did not have the political support, the organizational capacity, or in any respect the instructions to produce new policy for the internet. What did come out of the IGF was largely goodwill amongst all the participants about the nature of the exchanges that they've had, and a series of what are called dynamic coalitions, which are multi-stakeholder groups. That means that each dynamic coalition features participation from government representatives, from representatives of the business community, and from representatives of NGOs and other civil society organizations, including researchers and academics. And they are, over the course of the year, to self-organize, and this is very key. They don't have necessarily logistical support or any kind of funding from the IGF itself to self-organize work on various issues. And they've self-selected the issues. And it was sort of, in some ways, it was an organic bottom-up process that happened over the course of the IGF. There'd be in a workshop, they'd be talking about a certain issue, there'd be a lot of interest from the audience to their workshop, and that someone would get up and say, well, do we want to talk about making a dynamic coalition on this? Others were launched at the IGF, and it seemed very evident that a lot of work had gone on preparing these coalitions in the background prior to the IGF. So the issues that these coalitions will address are issues like privacy, there's one that's focusing on establishing a Bill of Rights for the Internet. There's one that actually is focusing on IGF funding, so funding for the IGF to make greater to allow for greater participation of delegates from developing countries. So at any rate, what will the IGF produce on the basis of these dynamic coalitions? That very much remains to be seen. It isn't clear what status they will have on the agenda of next year's IGF. It is clear that they are expected to come and at least report on the work they've done over the course of the year. And the key point is, how will they be able to actually influence the substantive work that is done in governing the Internet? So I think largely it will be up to the members of the dynamic coalitions themselves, and especially the organizers, to not only facilitate the work and discussion that will go on over the course of the year in the dynamic coalitions, but then to take the conclusions formed and the studies that are done and present them to other international organizations beside the IGF, such as the ICANN or the World Intellectual Property Organization, or it could be a variety of organizations that are relevant to Internet governance, but to actually say, this is on the basis of work done under the rubric of an IGF dynamic coalition, this is something that we think your organization should think about changing in its practice or in its mandate regarding the role that it plays in governing the Internet. It is important to evaluate what happened in Greece at the IGF 2006 within the spirit of it being a new phase in multi-stakeholder participation in international governance. But at the same time, it is also important to keep in mind that what we're really looking at is something of a governance paradox. That's to say that you're trying to create international multi-stakeholder governance out of an institution that has no mandate for producing binding policy results. So yes, it is important to see what's coming as kind of a work in process and as the beginning stages in an evolution. And in that respect, I think the enthusiasm that the participants at the IGF itself especially felt is very significant and important. But at the same time, it is important to hold the IGF to the criteria that it has to substantively impact the task and the work of governing the Internet, and not just provide a good opportunity for people who have the means and the time and the specialty to attend the IGF meetings themselves to gain from that experience. So in that respect, it is certainly a new experiment in multi-stakeholder governance. It's the first time that admission to a UN-sponsored event was open to this extent. It's the first time that multi-stakeholderism worked on a peer-to-peer basis. That's to say that government delegates didn't have any special power or any special privilege relative to delegates from civil society, to people even like me. I had as much right to take the floor and speak on an issue that I found important as the special envoy for the Information Society of the Government of France, or someone from NTIA in the American government. So in that respect, it was significant. Whether or not that turns out to be a positive development or just an experiment that runs aground, that really remains to be seen, and I think it will be particularly important what happens in the 2007 IGF, in particular in regards to the work of the dynamic coalitions. That if the dynamic coalitions can show up at 2007 and actually contribute in a deliberative process to building on the work that they've, allow the IGF to build on the work that they've done over the course of the year, and as I said, through liaising and making recommendations to other organizations that do have their hands on the switches of internet governance, if that will produce some sort of value add for the system, then that will be a real contribution.